Are we good?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about DNA. There's a lot of things about DNA to cover with. This is not going to be a biology class. I'm not going to go into all the details of what's involved in DNA and genetics. There's a lot of great nifty white papers out there that can help guide you to understand it in more detail. But I'm going to give just a cursory understanding of that before I just talk more about the practical application of DNA within genealogy itself. So there's going to be really these things I'm going to try to cover, which is like, what can we learn from the DNA as relates to our family history studies? What providers provide different kinds of DNA tests? What are some of the pros and cons that they have with them? What's the test itself like? And then deep diving particularly into Ancestry's DNA offering. The other ones are good too. That this isn't, in any kind of way of trying to bump their service over others, but it's the one I'm most familiar with. And of course, church members and some others have an easier access at their library or what have you through the Ancestry system. So I think it's a good one to focus around anyway. So with that in mind, just know that a lot of this discussion today is going to be me showing you my results, my son's results, seeing a lot of what happens on the Ancestry website. So a little bit less presentation in terms of the PowerPoint and a lot more in just terms of you seeing the user experience over on Ancestry. Any questions on the agenda? Okay, so let's go in here. Mr. Snowman knows he's flaky from his DNA. Good for him. This is another one I enjoy. This is God over here on the clouds. Making them out of mud was easy. It's the hard part was coding the DNA. So I appreciate that here. So again, this is not a genetics course, but I just want to make sure people understand generally what DNA is, right? It's a series of double helix chains, right, that have instructions for growing our bodies, developing them, continuing their function and their reproduction. But this is in every known organism. Maybe there's some organism out there without it, but everyone we've studied thus far uses this. Our DNA, at least in sexual beings, that meaning ones with gender, right? So men and women, that DNA, 50% comes from each parent. It's combined randomly through a process called recombination, so that what parts you get DNA-wise from a father or from a mother, you can never quite tell, which is why siblings they have similarities, but they still look somewhat very different. My children, my daughter looks like me, my youngest looks like my wife, and my oldest is somewhere in between, and we're curious what the fourth one coming in November will look like. But there's this recombination process in which parts of the parent end up in the child and which parts are never quite known.
Question.
Yep.
Does that mean that identical twins have identical DNAs?
Yes, that is correct. Now, that would be initially, of course, there could be some, slight DNA recoding error or mutation once they're, born, but from the get-go, they should be identical genetically.
Thank
now,
you.
of course, the phenotype, the way they look, that's similar, although there are the unique things from tongue prints to fingerprints to the irises of the eyes. Those are all very unique, even between twins. All right, and that's because environment, right? DNA is and everything. So anyway, with this DNA that comes about, we can isolate it and study the similarity of one person's DNA to another person's DNA. We can study both those X chromosomes and those Y chromosomes when a male is involved, of course. This allows us to really dig into and look at lots of fascinating things, from preconditions we might have to certain health problems to physical traits that we possess, just like, hey, the way an earlobe is not, attached directly to the head on some people, but, more freestanding on others, to male hair pattern loss, which is important to me. Not receding, all good. And then also allows us, though, to understand other things like family history mysteries, to someone who's adopted trying to find their biological parents. In my family history, I had a long-standing qualm or debate that my great-grandmother's sister wasn't legitimate, not really part of the family, right? So some of those things can be solved through this. And then it can also help facilitate further genealogical research, which I'll speak about how through that's done here. So one thing to recognize as we talk about DNA here and the upshot of recombination is that the way we talk about our heritage ethnically can differ very much from it genetically. I have this little diagram on the side that's meant to help illustrate this. You can see at the top A, that's essentially a set of grandparents, right? And they've got their DNA, which they've inherited from, their mom and their dad on either side. And you can see what portions of it get passed down randomly to each of their children. And then once you get down to the grandchildren, that happens once again, once they marry and their DNA gets passed down. You can obviously see the gray ones from their spouse. But you can see when you look at C and D, they have at that bottom kind of blue area, you see a dot that carries over. That's DNA that they have in common. Then when you look at D to E, that bottom area, that's ones that D and E have in common. Notice how C and D have that commonality, but D and E do not. So you'll never going to see this exact pass down of information about certain ancestors or parents and each of their kids. So this could mean, for instance, that you tell yourself that you're half Spanish. I'm supposed to be a quarter Spanish, right? And I tell myself that culturally, and that's still true because genetics isn't the only way to view heritage. We shouldn't be reducing it to that. But from a genetic viewpoint, I'm actually much less than that. So the way I got genes handed down from my Spanish ancestors didn't all end up in me as if it was just the straight carving of percentages. So there's more to think about here before we dive into ancestry, and that's on reference panels and the concept of it. So you can imagine when a DNA test is trying to tell you how you're from a particular place, is they're comparing your DNA with other people from that area. Those people from that area are the reference panel. Now, of course, it's very important that you get your reference panel right. Because as you can imagine, there's people moving in and out of countries all the time, especially more in recent centuries. There's invaders, there's mass exoduses. How do you determine that people that you're comparing your DNA against are truly representative of that particular area? And so that's something that Ancestry and all these companies really have to work around, is fine-tuning this concept of the reference panel, who's really from there. They've done a few things for this to try to help them stay true. They use some third-party research that's been collected. They use DNA samples from these researchers, PhD guys. But as you can imagine, most of the time they've gone to very isolated populations, areas high up in the mountains, places cut off from a lot of the rest of society, and say, hey, these people have been here hundreds and hundreds of years. We feel like that they're the most representative of the area. Now, of course, being cut off also means they could be non-representative in some ways too, right? So you need to understand, as you get results back on your DNA, what they're having to do to try to give you those results, and recognize that there's a certain fudge factor, right? Which you're gonna see in the results too, which at least I see Ancestry very clearly admits with these ranges they give you in terms of how well they feel like you match. And that's why, as they get better and improve their reference panels, get more people to look at, that they will change your results over time too, because they feel like they're understanding these regions better.
I have another comment, if I could. I had a Native American friend tell me just the other day that they couldn't get good DNA results because it was such a rare, they don't have enough sampling with the Native Americans, which seemed really strange to me, very odd, because it doesn't take much to get a sample, does it?
No, and I'm a little surprised to hear that. I know that they've had to apply slightly different techniques with Native American populations recently. Some of it you might view as questionable. By that I mean is they look at the commonalities between DNA and Indigenous American people, and they throw out anything that's from Europe, from the Middle East, anything. They say, no, we just don't accept that that is essentially part of their heritage, and they isolate just in these, these sequences that they view truly indigenous. Ancestry has a published list of how many samples they have from each region in indigenous America. And they've got a good, I don't know, 300 to 400 in several of these regions. So obviously it could be better, but it's actually more than in some of the other regions.
Well, they better hurry. If they need more, they better hurry up, because my goodness, the originals are going to be all gone pretty soon. They're not, if they're not already.
You're right.
Huh, interesting. Thank you.
So I find this part of the science interesting. You can appreciate the challenge that they're having in trying to provide us this information. And there's a really nifty, 20, 30 page white paper that Ancestry's put together. If you want to read it, I've cranked about halfway through it. That allows you to get much deeper into the science and how they decide their reference panels. So anyway, they collect, they try to hone in on these particular areas. They try to filter out what they consider extraneous information. And then they compare their results with historical ones they've done in the past, as well as some other reference panels that aren't their own. So think of like 23andMe's. So this I think is always useful too, which is, okay, that's cool. I can spit in some tube, or I can swab my cheeks or whatever. What's in it for me? What do I get out of this? Because now there's people are gonna have my DNA. Who knows? Now they're gonna catch some criminal with it. Who knows, as you see in the news these days. What do I get out of it by doing it? There's a few things that I think you can really get out of it. One is it really helps you connect with other descendants. Ancestry does a really fantastic job of this, and I'll show you as we demonstrate it more fully what that means. It does a really neat job of comparing people who have shared DNA and showing and overlapping their family trees together versus, family search where, there's kind of a universal family tree. That this is everybody's got their own, and it allows you to kind of amalgamate those different ones together to show you that you may be missing people in your tree. So it's pretty cool way of giving you record hints. And then it also points, of course, where your progenitors likely were. This can be very interesting to some people. You can imagine for many African Americans who they get back to, say, the plantation, and they don't really know where they're from thereafter. This DNA research can at least help them see which portions of Africa their ancestors are from. It may help them isolate, some of the tribes. It hasn't gotten that detailed in terms of the regions of Africa for what I've seen in Ancestry, but it's getting better all the time. And I think for them, it could, help fix a piece of a puzzle or provide something where otherwise they just hit a stone wall. Other areas is it can solve family mysteries like I'd spoken about with finding a parent or settling a family dispute. It could create a family issue too if certain information is found, of course. That's always the joy of DNA. And it can give you an understanding of yourself, your health, your traits, and you can compare that with other people to see how similar they are to you. So some of it's just personal interest areas, other ones it's family drama that you're solving, and other ones is true just helping you along your family history. So here's some of the most common providers, and I'm going to talk about some of their strengths and their weaknesses here. 23andMe is very awesome for health. I mean, it'll study specific gene sequences and that you can click on and see and show you based on your results, what are likely risks you could be having from a health perspective to maybe you're a carrier, like it's not a damage to you, but you are a carrier of the trait, so you could be passing it down to your kids or your grandkids. Now, they don't understand, of course, the science of this perfectly. Many genes interact with one another, so it's not like you just have this, then obviously you're going to end up like this, or your kids, your grandkids will. But it's giving you a kind of sense of probability, of, oh, that's a possibility that could occur for me. Ancestry is now offering a health option. I hear that one's okay, but that 23andMe is still better. 23andMe also looks at both of your DNA lines, so the mitochondrial or maternal line DNA as well as the paternal line. My Ancestry really only focuses on the maternal line. Both 23andMe, I put this as a pro for both, and that is that they continually update their results as their samples get better and better, and as they collect from us, that they're also able to make more conjectures between the DNA that they get from us. So there's some downsides though to 23andMe, and I'd say the main downside is that the people in 23andMe, because they know it's more of a health-oriented one, they don't spend as much time putting in their family history information into the system. Yeah, you can see other users and people can put their data there, but you can't import data from another system into 23andMe currently. So that means you're going to have to spend the time to replicate all of your genealogy information into that other system. And you can imagine how many people want to spend the time to do that. So as a result, that means that while you can get really great health information, you're not going to get as good and fruitful information on the genealogy side in terms of understanding not just that someone shares DNA with you, but well, how do they? To which line do they belong? Great. I don't care as much that I relate to someone. I want to know how I'm related to them. This is where I feel that Ancestry really shines. They obviously have a lot of family history tree information that people built out prior to them offering this DNA product, and had a lot of collaborative social media sharing there before. So they're able to tap into their data in such a way that a DNA overlay is really rich and really helpful, which I think you'll see today. Home DNAs is more unique. I think it's the weakest of the bunch, but it's kind of interesting. It doesn't really help you look particularly at your ancestors or compare you with other people or your own individual makeup, like looking at your health or your traits, but they isolate your DNAs belonging to particular groups, so particular mitochondrial groups, and they'll say, oh, we know that group XYZ has migrated over centuries this way. So you can kind of see the movement of your ancestors' DNA across the European continent. It's mostly after Africa, just thereafter. So it's kind of neat. However, without it being able to tie to the rest of your family history research, it's more of a, I don't know how best to say it, a kind of more anecdotal research. You're like, oh, that's cool. I really wish I could understand it in the context of everything else. So I recommend to people, there's no reason though to think of this as just which one do I do? You can do multiple, right? If you want to understand your health or you want to have a broader scope of people that you can interact with on your results, why not do 23andMe and Ancestry DNA? I recommend waiting for a holiday sale. These usually come, most of these studies I found range around $99. If you want to get health-oriented ones, maybe it's $199, so it gets double the cost. But you can wait for the holidays, which is what I did when I took mine a couple of years back, and it's more around $59 there. If someone just wants to do it now, I'm happy to send a referral code that'll get you 15% off at Ancestry too. The last point here I just had is just that, since women only possess X chromosomes, they're not going to be able to gain some DNA study that comes from a Y chromosome. And so that they should try to get a brother or a father, someone to do that test as well, so that they can kind of gain a greater sense of their family history DNA. All right, so those are the different options. I will say there are other providers out there. These are just the big three. I'm sure you could find many other ones out there that do it too. MyHeritage has one, and I'm sure there's a new company almost every day trying to break into here. There's money to be made, right? Okay, so what's a test look like? How does this go? How do you go about it? What do they do with it once they receive it? I think this video is a little bit interesting. Hopefully the audio will come through. If not, we'll give up.
When you get your kit in the mail, it comes in a box. The first thing you have to do is you have to go online and activate your kit. You put in your secret number and it gets activated. The second thing you do is you spit into a little tube and then you put it in a box and you mail it back to us. And the laboratory takes this little DNA solution, takes a little bit of it out, isolates your DNA out of it, and then subjects your DNA to a pretty complicated and really snazzy test to measure it at 700,000 regions all throughout your genome.
Those 700,000 regions, known in the science community as single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs for short, are tiny mutations in our DNA that make us all unique. Ancestry DNA scientists then go in and compare your SNPs to SNPs from people all over the world.
We use a big collection of samples that have been collected from around the world, from Mongolia to lots of different populations in Africa, all over Europe, Mexico, South America. We've got samples from all over the world.
Ancestry DNA is connecting people like never before.
All right, so there you go. It gives you a little sense of the quick test that you get in the mail, that you'll type in an activation code, you'll swab and spit in, and then you can see the scientists go at work. So it takes, just like Dennis had mentioned earlier, usually it's a good 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks before you get your results back. Some of these companies are even longer. I feel like,
Never before.
I wasn't expecting that to control there. The company up here, Home DNA, I think theirs is more like 6 to 8 weeks. So it can be a little while from the time you do the test and you get them back, as long as they actually get them and they'll do them right. So you don't have to do them 3, 4 times and throw your hat in the ring in frustration. So, all right, once you do that, you'll finally get your results and you'll get a little giddy. You're like, all right, but let's see what happened. What information is there going to be from my DNA? So I'm going to show the 4 areas that Ancestry DNA really focuses around. One is your DNA story. The other one is on your traits. If you so opt in to do that, you don't have to. It's like 15 to 20 bucks more to study your DNA traits. I mean, some of it will be incredibly intuitive for that. Like, oh yeah, I already knew that I was that way. I didn't need my DNA to tell me that. Other parts of it though are a little fascinating, especially when they're not accurate. Then I mentioned some of the networking benefits, which we'll get into more, and the through lines, which is this amalgamation of family history data to try to point out to you potential ancestors or potential descendants. So this concludes the PowerPoint part of it. So now we'll be hopping over to Ancestry here. Does everyone still see my screen?
Yep.
So first thing I like about this is you can see right at the top, it's telling me that, hey, we're getting more precise, and this month we're in, I'm going to get even more precise results. The last time I think they did an update of results was in August 2020. So,
Marty,
yep.
the screen we're seeing is your PowerPoint yet.
Oh, well, that's apparently I shared an application.
You were just asking if we saw your screen. We do, just the wrong screen.
Yeah, I thought, well, this is kind of strange.
Yeah, let's see if I can change.
Smiling baby.
New share. Let's get over. All right. You guys see it now?
Oh yeah.
There we
Welcome,
go.
Martin Edward.
There you go. So that's my full name. And I was just calling here. I think it's nice that Ancestry lets you know what's going on, right? When are you going to get new results and updates? It's been about a year since they did the last one. So you'll get it. There's 4 main areas, as I'd mentioned, that they give you some information on. I'm going to hop in specifically to my DNA area. There's a couple things here that you'll see icons off the bat, which I will go explain to you. So you can see there's some settings here, and these are very important. Just like any company, they value, well, any worthwhile company, they value some of your privacy and try to give you some control over that. So you can see that once you get your results, you're going to need to link them to a tree in here. And once you've linked it, you can set some privacy, which is to say, hey, you can allow other people who match your DNA to be able to see you or not, right? How do you want to display yourself to people? If you don't want them to know your name, you don't have to. You can have it be, MP or, Panda Bear, whatever you want it to be, it can go in there. You can allow people to share traits information with you and you with them or not, or to be able to access your own test results. You can choose to be able to contribute into a human diversity project. I chose not to. Everyone, can make that choice, And then I think this is also valuable here. You can actually download your DNA data. So while you got your test from Ancestry, that doesn't mean it has to remain solely within Ancestry. So you can process a zip file of it. It's going to come in a text file of raw data. So as long as something else can parse out this DNA data, then you can bring it into another system as well. I've downloaded it just to have it myself. I haven't tried to input it into another system yet, so I can't tell you about those results. But I think it's great that they don't keep it within their system so that while you paid for the results, they're still the gatekeeper, if that makes sense. So it's nice that you can own your data. Okay, let's get back away from the settings. And then we're going to get over to the DNA story itself once apparently it gets done loading. Okay, you can see that it gives them very quickly this ethnicity estimate. You'll notice there's a world map here. There's different regions that compose it. It's focusing just immediately on the ones that mine belong to. I can actually go see them all the different regions throughout the world here. You can see that it'll populate this very lovely world map of all the different regions. I believe it's around 71 regions so far that they have isolated. That as they keep fine tuning it, they'll do so more. And they have individual regions within it, right? This is where I was saying you can somewhat focus in amongst the tribes if you were of the African-American descent or African descent. So there's a large series of regions to which you can be connected, but then there's of course what your results actually tell you, which is you're not just a citizen of the whole world or descendant of all those genes. You have specific areas to which you are tied to. You can tell my highest one here is England and Northwestern Europe. When I clicked on it and it had it zoom in, you can see the area in which it initially showed the region in which my DNA belonged to grew. And that's because there's a focus area, which is where the highest concentration of this DNA pattern is in that high, brightly saturated region. Outside is it's saying, look, people interact, they have commerce, they travel right across the sea, they have kids over there too. So there is some sharing of that DNA as well in nearby regions, including apparently here a little bit Switzerland too. You'll notice I mentioned earlier how I spoke about a range. So they do a series of, I think it's 40 different tests and try each time to see if they can get a slightly different result. And based on that, they calculate a range of what they think is most probable that you relate to that reference panel in that region. But they recognize that it could also be a little bit higher or a little bit lower. In my case here, I'm in the highest end of the spectrum, but they're saying, look, based on the science as we understand it now, you're not less than 30%. You are very related to these people here, which does align very much with my family history. Through my mother's father and my father's mother. See, Scotland, it's a little bit interesting here, which I was amused by this. If you look at this range, you're most likely 27%, but it could be 0 when it's up at 27. You see some of those, you're like, wait, no, that's not very probable, but it shows you, wow, that they could still be, that they admit they could still be quite off in some of their estimates here. Spain, I'd mentioned earlier on how I'm a quarter Spanish. And here it shows, you know, I'm 14%, and they think the highest in the range is 15%. So I received less of that DNA from my father as I did from his Scotch mother and some of my my dad's Iberian heritage. Then there's other regions too. You look at Sweden, I don't really have any Swedish family names in my history that I can think of off the bat, but I do know that there were some Vikings that went over from this area and came over here. So there's many explanations, you know, as to, you know, why you could have certain DNA in your line. Some cool things to look at here, which I'll explain. You can see it tells you a little bit about the region once you clicked on it. I have to move this Zoom part over. And you can read on the area and some of its history as well. So when you click on it, they had, you know, a series of family history researchers that spoke about that group of area and told you about, you know, its initial beginnings. Has some nice colorful painting pictures and shows some of their migrations that the Vikings of that area made, and then goes to, I'd say, Enlightenment / early modern period. Doesn't really go beyond that. It gives you a little, I think, flavor as relates to the geography areas of your DNA. You can take this synopsis that they gave you at these ones, and you can get a quick little one-page printout if you're a paper guy. You know, you don't believe in just strictly digital copies. You can get a one-page summary in here fairly easily, which I appreciate that they put together. If you have questions, this is actually really cool. I'm going to open this other tab here. They've got a whole series of, sometimes it's a video, other times it's just a little descriptor that helps you understand much more specifically the terminology they're using, some of the science behind it. And I think they're written in fairly intuitive in short ways that will make it graspable by you as you look at it. So nice little help section here too. They got a course sharing, so you can go say, hey, cool, this is a lot of what consists with me, and you can go copy that link and share it on Facebook or wherever you'd like. So that is, you know, that section here. This is where I think it gets kind of cool too. Now you have to be the sort of person that shares their location for this really to be interesting, but you'll see here that they've actually allowed you to view where some of your current DNA matches are today. So I can go in here into here, and I didn't know here in Texas, I've got some third cousins. This one, Brooke Snow, is related to through my Minerva Teichert line, and she's living over in Midland. So if I wanted to go, you know, talk to her and visit with her, it's like, oh, that's pretty neat. She's right there. I've got some other ones, of course, scattered, you know, throughout the world. But a person has to choose, as it notes here, to add their location in their profile so that it really shows up that way. And who knows how often people keep that up to date so that they haven't, you know, moved somewhere else. But I think this is a really neat feature of looking at other people that share, you know, the basic unit of comparison, which is a centimorgan. They look at those who have the highest amounts down to the lowest amounts so that they think are of statistical significance. And you can kind of see, where are we, you know, today, and who might I want to connect with? That's the main part from the DNA story part of it. If you are connected to a more specific community, which I'll get to here, I'm not, unfortunately. I got on Ancestry support and I said, hey, I saw these nifty features that some people had that I didn't have. And you can see if you click on, let's just do Southeastern England here. You can click on a specific area. It'll show you where these people kind of migrated with these dots and lines over a period of time. So you can see, hey, they started going over to Australia in 1775, you know, it kept going there in 1825, and so on. So I thought that was pretty neat. Unfortunately, since none of my own data tied with any of it, it didn't end up being as interesting to me. But if you're one of those that gets that connection, you might enjoy some of the timeline experience with that region. Any questions on what you've seen so far in terms of displaying how related you are to a particular region? People may not be following me perfectly, and there's no wrong comments or questions. So did anyone get confused looking at any of this?
I think you're doing a really good job of explaining it, Marty. I'm learning. This is great.
Great. All right, so I'm going to move along from this DNA mapping, you might say, over to the DNA matches. And this is where I actually think it gets pretty interesting. Maybe before I go away, I'll go back. I have my sons on here too, so you might be amused just to see how it changes as you see different results. So I'm going back here, you can see mine again, and then this just has it for my son Liam, who did the test with me. So it displays it the same way, but some variety, right? I didn't have any of this, Finnish in me at all. So a lot more of the French too. I had a little band of it in the South. And he did not, as you can see here in the Iberian, he didn't get as much here as 5%. They say, hey, 0 to 6. So anyway, just showing you some different results so you can view the change in the experience. Let's go back to the summary. We are going to now go into the DNA matches once more. Now, what's really neat here is there's two different views. You saw some of it on the other page, which is you can have a map view. But what I like in this particular one is you can apply filters, right? So you can say, I want to see just my people who are like within my first cousin, range. So I'm like, oh yeah, right here is, and it's hiding it from me because I'm got zoom over top of it, John Eastwood. So that's more of that is my uncle. So no surprise, an uncle and cousin would be very similar. And I think this is Connie Coates. Yep. So another cousin as well. Then you're like, hey, I want to go out like a little bit further in range. Now I want to see where my second cousins are. You can start seeing them and so on with third cousins. So I really think that's a neat way of helping you if you wanted to reach out or specifically see people of a particular relationship to you to be able to utilize that filter. Within the list view, you also have a lot more filters that you can apply, and you can see this actually gave me a scare the first time I saw it, because you can see it groups your parent-child relationships together. And I was like, I know who this Tim Polito guy is. It's my dad. It's just Liam Polito. Who's this TP guy? I was like, I don't have some child I don't know about out there, do I? Well, it's just my dad. He'd taken it twice, and so there's TP for Tim Polito. So, but my wife was like, who's this? So good times. All right, you can see it kind of logically layers out your family from what's closest in parent-child to who's kind of closer in a first to second cousin range, and keeps going through all the way to second, third, fourth, and there's a lot there. So a couple of things you can do as you go down this. I mentioned, of course, the filtering that you can do. This one's nice. Common ancestors is saying, hey, of these people that have shared DNA with you, which of them has a family tree in which there's a common ancestor that we can identify, right? This is going to help you see, how am I related to this person, not just that I am related to that person. So you can say, hey, we only want to see people with common ancestors. We could also say, hey, I only want to see people that have, a public linked tree, because I want to be able to see the information. It's one thing that, hey, we have a shared ancestor on some tree. I want to be able to view it, right? So you can restrict that there. You could restrict it to ones that you have notes about. I don't have any notes in it, so it's going to remove everything there. But you can group people in groups. So I started one of these for fun. It's got like my Eastwood descendants. So through my grandpa, hey, who of us are there? I can apply that, and I can add those tags to descendants here just to say, hey, I recognize these people. So that is that. one. I'm going to reset this. Share DNA.
May I ask?
Yep, go ahead.
So, like under Timothy there, it says public linked tree, and then it has 1,615 people. Is that how many people he has on that tree?
That is correct.
Okay. And currently, I have most of my ancestry on Family Search. So
you'd have to
I'll
input that into this system, which can be done.
so that I really get a good connection.
Correct. Mine, for instance, is not the most complete here on Ancestry. When I first built mine out in Ancestry is when I was in college. So a lot's happened since then, and I just didn't keep up with it. So yeah, you would want to curate it here first, but it's way easier to do it here than in 23andMe.
Okay.
Yep, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So you can see here, I think it's neat. You can also put in a centimorgan range. You can say how related do I want this person, to be to me. If I'm in this, 100 to 200 range or 300 range, I'm looking more at my, cousins or second, third cousins is the case may be here. So it can kind of help you isolate certain groups out, which I like. So the filtering is really nice. I'm going to clear out this one and show you, once you've decided to study someone, how you can get some other neat information. So I'm going to click on Connie here, and it's going to tell us and compare DNA information about myself and her. So the first thing you're going to see is the common ancestors, which, hey, isn't it great? It highlights right out. This is who it is. Charles Eastwood, Constance Eugene Wallace. That was my great grandparents. She comes in through that line. So she's in through them, and it calls them here too. Highlighting's great, right? Then when I look at ethnicity, it shows this kind of a comparison in that, charting I showed you earlier. So you can see where are we similar, where are we not. She's got way more British in her than even I have. And then the shared matches, I think, is really neat here too, because what that says is, hey, by looking at the trees, you're able to infer what part of your family that Connie is related to. If we can look at your relationship together, let's isolate and see what other people are compared to you in similar ways that Connie is. So now I can look at all these people and be like, oh, this is my Eastwood family, right? All these people, they're tied in through there. And I can then assign them, which you'll see this little plus button over here. Shelley Parker, I could be like, oh yeah, she's another one of my Eastwood descendants, and add her to the group. So I think that sharing feature is very neat. If you're trying to create a group of people that you want to reach out to about a particular part of your genealogy, instead of you going through a list of thousands of people, right? You can use this tool to help isolate the people that matter as relates to that family line, and then use them to contact and reach out to. As I'd mentioned, reaching out to here, you can see I can, add a relationship to her. I could just message her, right now through it and talk with her about whatever I'd like. Any questions on this part of the tool? Did you guys see some of the value of being able to see your results and then isolate descendant groups in ways that you could then collaborate with them? Is there anything else here you'd like to see?
I've often wondered what does DNA really have to do with genealogy other than finding other people like you who are related to you that, you get your family tree. I don't see the value of the DNA, maybe because I don't have any DNA, but.
Yeah, let's get to that part here. This is something I think that is neat. Now, I wouldn't consider it a replacement for true genealogy work, which for me, I guess maybe it's because I was a geek in college, an English philosophy major. For me, it's all about citations and research and records. I love that people feel like they're related to someone and they got some story about it, but I'm all about the records. So you still need that, but there is a way of helping you get useful hints towards building out your genealogy through this concept they have here of through lines.
Marty?
Yep.
I'd like to throw in a part of an answer to that.
Yep.
Who's your daddy?
Yeah.
Whenever I've helped people with DNA, I've always told them, it's your DNA. The results are what they are. And there's been more than one case when the paperwork, the birth certificates, the census records say one thing, the DNA says something else. We'll leave it at that.
Yep, and that could be telling you you're barking up the wrong genealogical tree.
Exactly.
Well, Marty, too, sometimes you're just trying to fill in the blanks. My great-great-grandfather was born in 1869, but the person who they say was his father died in 1861. But get the math there.
Yeah.
So we had to do a DNA trace with my one cousin. We did a mail line. That was the only way we could figure it out. To find out who, we had an idea who it was. I mean, really strong idea, but it took doing that line for us to confirm that, no, this Larry Dew was really not my biological great-great-grandfather, that Malcolm Parker was. But it turns out he really wasn't a Parker, he was a Hall.
Yeah, that's another story.
That's a whole nother story. But the thing was, it helped our family answer a question that we all had, because then it helped us do a line of family history research that we hadn't been able to do before. So it worked for us.
I agree. You can also solve.
I surrender.
He's like, I stand corrected. It also can help solve certain family mysteries. So, for instance, this is my great-great-grandfather, Frederick Colhett. He had many daughters. One was Minerva Teichert, the painter. That's my great-grandmother. Minerva didn't believe that her youngest sister was her actual sister. She believed this because of the way that her mom treated this sister. She just dropped her off at her doorstep one day and basically said, go raise her. She didn't really believe that a real mom would do this to their own child. She had other reasons too, which I'm sure were tied to a lot of different heartache. But because of this, it created a rift in the family, as you can imagine, with someone not believing that they're truly part of the family or not. So there were some questions always associated with, well, who is right? Who was she really a part of the family? And that was definitely answered here. This is Constance. And you can see there's these definite DNA matches that go through and show that I share this DNA over with, with Minerva, and then over to Constance. So no question that she was related over to Frederick Colhett. So that some family debates are put to rest through the use of DNA. So what's pretty cool here, as you can see here, is it looks at all the different people, and it's pretty impressive if you think about the computing power of what they're doing here on the back end, right? All these people have their individual family trees who've chosen to participate in this. It then takes the individual family tree data and weds it together to create a much simpler picture for the person viewing it, right? And then shows the people with their DNA matches that belong to these different lines. These people that are in a box that is not dashed, I have already in my own family tree. Where it is dashed, I do not. And they're saying, hey, evaluate to determine if this person is. As you can imagine, the more and more people that have DNA matches with me that also have trees that are using this same information, saying this person is, my great-great-grandfather, that's adding more and more credence, the number of trees and DNA results that go up. So in this case, I already knew that Frederick Colhett was my great-great-grandfather, right? No question there. But in some cases, you may come up with an ancestry you don't know about, right? That you didn't have the information on. And then all of a sudden you can get some potential help there. So this is where you'll see in a filter, I can do potential ancestors. Now, I happen to know that this person is my ancestor because, I'm filled out much more on the family search side than I'm over here. But I just wanted to help you guys see and illustrate it. You can see once more, I know I'm related This is my DNA. This is, Francisco Pulido Ortega. I can see the different, people relating directly through my line, but then I can also look over at these different siblings, and amongst all these different siblings that have DNA results and looking at their family trees, they're saying, look, this is your third great grandfather. This is who it is. This should be on your line. Now, that doesn't take away all my research, though. I want to be clear. What if you were adopted, right? Or you had a different biological parent? I mean, you can't use other people's information to just dictate, how your family tree should go, but it does give you information to research. And that's what I really like. They're saying, hey, all these other people that share your DNA are putting this person on their tree. Here you go click on that person. And then it opens up this great window, which for me, this is the real holy grail, which is like, hey, all of these people have linked to it. And guess what? They've got 5 records that you can go look at that go tie to that person. So naturally, I'm the kind of person who's going to want to click in and see, okay, what are these records that they got, right? And then I'm going to go look at those. And if I'm convinced, then I'm going to add them over to my tree. So the very easy ability to click through, find potential ancestors, and see on those individual family trees that brought together this visual representation, hey, here's the records they're using. I find that really helpful and really cool. So do people follow me on this part?
Yep.
Yes.
So that's where I think you're going to get your genealogical payoff, where it's not just, hey, is it not a family mystery, or finding your true dad. I think this can really help people, give them hints to build out their family tree. But use the tool in here the full way. Don't just approve it. Actually do the research, click through the records, justify it as you go about it. There's a list view here you could do too. I find the relationship one much cleaner. Any questions on this part?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I hope people are excited about that part of it. There is more pieces. I recognize I'm already at 8 o'clock. Do I need to wrap it up, or does anyone want to see another piece? Can I keep going? Do I gotta stop? You tell me.
Well, it depends on what everybody else wants to do.
I imagine if they don't want to watch anymore, they'll just drop off.
Yeah. Or we could.
I've got a call coming in from one of my kids I've got to get to, but I just want to say this. Given my working backwards on my situation with no DNA, if you want to hire somebody to rob a bank, I'm probably your guy.
Thanks, sis. Very uplifted.
If you want, we could do a part 2. I don't know if you have enough information or.
Yeah, the only real part left to show, if I was going to do 23andMe, I could have shown some of the health side of it. That's more personal for a lot of people, and I wouldn't typically be the one showing that. But you can see the traits one, and that's all really there is left to show on the ancestry side, which is they've looked at particular genes you've got, and they said, hey, categorically, we're going to study you and tell you amongst your peers, what do you seem to be like in these areas? So some of it's fitness, some of it's nutrients, sensory, right? And then appearance. Appearance, you should know how you look, right? But there are ones that make us happy, male hair loss. Now, they never understand this perfectly. You can see that they claim I have a low chance. I'll believe it when my hair stops falling out. But you can compare yourself to others in the world, and you can also compare yourself, to your kids here. You can see I put my own response in there.
Now that Dennis is gone, I'll say that he and I think we are quite handsome. So, there may be some other opinions out there. So
well, they'd be wrong, but there are those other opinions.
That's right.
So you can invite people to compare your traits, and you can see some too. So this is between my son and I. You can see we're at 80% match. That doesn't mean we share 80% DNA, right? No, he shares 50%, but it's saying of the traits that they're studying, those particular genes, how similar are we to each other? Very, very close, 80%, much more than my wife is with him. So you can see on, let's Let's pick one here. We'll go back to the male pattern hair loss here. So we got an 83% similar score, but unfortunately, Liam's results say he has a high chance while mine is low. So I'm hoping that's true. We'll see. Other ones, though, they're not always completely accurate. They don't understand the complete interaction of some of these traits that they're testing for. So I'm going to go to a sensory one here, which would be like sun sneezing. I totally have this. I sun sneeze so much. Like I walk outside and it's been dark and I go in there, man, I'm going to sneeze. It's just going to happen once or twice. And yet the results say, no, I don't have it. Well, they're wrong. I definitely have this. Now, fortunately, the Ancestry team, they're not authoritarian. I'm sorry that this thing's going over the top of it. They recognize that there's a lot that goes into this and that they don't fully understand the full gene interactivity.
Do they have cilantro?
Yeah, they
there?
do. I think so. Let me go over to sensory. That seems like where that would be. Nutrients, be sensory. Asparagus. Here's cilantro version. There you go.
Okay.
Let's see what I am here. I like cilantro, so I don't think I'm there. Yeah, you probably like the taste of cilantro. See, I'm there. I'm not one of those people that thinks it tastes terrible. So this is more. It's not going to help you with any of your family history research. So let's be honest here. But it is a fun way of just kind of understanding certain things about yourself. Once the traits activity, the health activities that way too. This is less around your health here and just kind of about who you are and things about your genes.
So if I'm a couch potato, I can genetically say, well, I'm predisposition.
Yeah, they actually have that one in here. It's couch potato. Let me get there. I'm just kidding. They don't have that in there. But I was going to get to that sun sneezing one just so you can see where they kind of dig in a little bit further on it. So I was surprised this many people have this case going on. They said, hey, they just haven't studied it a lot because it's harmless, right? I mean, so you sneeze when you're on the sun, whatever, right? But there, you can kind of read more up on any of the particular things if you're interested on it.
Marty, this is on 23andMe that you're showing us now?
This is Ancestry.
Oh, it's on Ancestry, okay.
Yep. So you can choose to take a test that also shows your traits. I mean, if you got to decide if you feel it's $15 to $20, if it's worth paying for that up tick in cost. I was like, whatever, sure, why not? I'm doing the test. I might as well just be amused by the science of it, right?
So do they do this test from the original swab?
Correct.
Spittle? Okay.
And then just like the geography studies can be improved over time, same thing with the traits, right? They've got your data and it's in that text file that you can download. So as they get better at understanding the traits, they can just update your own information with it, which is nice. You don't have to take multiple tests. Now, sometimes they say they recommend that in different family members, but yeah, I'm not gonna do that. So yeah, this is kind of the last piece of it. They have a questionnaire area too, if you want to like help them qualitatively decide how good their research was for you and just try to learn more about you. That's this personal discoveries project. You can do that if you're a good Samaritan, I guess. I'm more of the opinion of like, hey, I'd do that for you if you gave me another test for free or something, but I'm helping you monetize your product. What am I getting in return? So you got to make those judgments there of where you want to spend your time. So, all right, any other questions about any of this? I think it's simple in its focus, right? Here's some traits, here's some maps, displays, and then here's people that share your DNA and descendants you can reach out to. But the way it organizes it and the through lines and allows you to filter so well with the matches, I think could really help you connect with people, find potential ancestors, share documents, right? Who knows what your third cousins have? They may have some journal or some postcards or some letters you had no clue existed, right? And so being able to reach out, heirlooms, people you can reach out to there and just kind of, look under the covers and see what else they might have, I think is pretty neat. All right. Any other questions or comments from anyone?
Marty, I have a question. So if I'm going to import my family search into Ancestry, some of my family search I haven't been able to, I maybe only like 3, possibly 4 generations back, I've verified, but past that, I don't know if those people are really in my Ancestry or not. So I guess what I'm asking
Are you
is,
afraid of like diluting the data by having some minutes spuriously that you put into Ancestry?
yeah, so should I be concerned with that? I mean, how
I
many?
wouldn't. I mean, anyone who's and I don't mean to sound snobbish, I guess, because it might. Everybody knows people do that, right? That a lot of data kind of gets on here, and that's why at the end of the day, anyone who's really working at their genealogy is going to rely on records. They're just using your information as a hint as to where to go. So I wouldn't sweat it too much.
If I understood the question and I understood the answer, it's my opinion you would want to put good information out there or the matches would be not good.
Now it's looking at a tons of different data sets though. So they're going to filter out stuff that doesn't really match, right? You can see when they looked at a potential ancestor, they showed the number of DNA matches of people that also had those ancestors on their tree, right? So I wouldn't worry too much myself about it. Now, I like giving honest information. I like being good there, but you're going to have to ask yourself practically, how much time do I want to weed through this tree to put it in here? I respect if you don't want to prune everything that you don't have data on. It's a good practice to do, but I respect that there's a level of effort involved that may not be conducive to wanting to get out of it what you'd like to from the system. And I don't think you'd be damaging other people that much. So
depending on which test you do and what you want to find out, you need to have about at least 5 good generations. And I think you said you had about 4. So, but shoot for 5 or more. And
yeah,
is this Michelle?
Yes.
That's asking? Okay.
Yeah, and I would definitely recommend getting those 5, as Jim's saying too, because you're going to want to connect over a common ancestor, right? And if you can't get that there, you're not going to have as many people that you could collaborate your data with. So I could be naive, but I'd like to think that, between census records and other vital records that you can flesh that out further. It doesn't always work that way. I got a few guys in the South and Civil War, which I can't get past no matter how hard I try. So I get it.
I've got an ER ball that just everybody's named ER back in those days.
Ezra Ruth or whatever it is.
Right. Edward Randolph is what I think it is, but that's.
I don't know why I have a Ruth name. I'll give that.
So one more question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
As I add more people, so maybe I'll just do the basic 5 generations to find out if my dad is really my dad. And so I'll do the 5 generations on his line, but maybe I'll only do 2 or 3 on my grandmother's line, who I'm not as concerned about. On my maternal line, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So as I go through and add people to my grandmother's line later on, then Ancestry will update from that. Is that how that works?
I'm trying to follow you completely. So,
so if I do my DNA test with my paternal side being robust
Mhm.
and my maternal side being, a little sketchy because I didn't want to take the time to add in all of those people. Because I don't want to do, I don't think I want to do the
hear your
whole dump.
question. Yeah, once you updated it, the system would be able to detect the common ancestors once you flesh that out. Before
And
then, they
it'll-
would see that you're genetic related. They just say, hey, we know you're close. We don't know how, right?
Okay, yeah.
So
Great.
yeah,
That
that's
sounds
a good
good.
question. So of course, on your paternal one, to really determine that, your results won't be enough. You're going to need other people's results who, are cousins or, other ones that you're sure of that paternal relationship, so that you can then see, hey, wait, how do we match up? So unless you got him to take a test, too. So
The closest thing is I have his son, and I don't know any of that family. So
yeah, so
Yeah.
if the son or any of them, and remember, you don't necessarily need to know them. They just need to be in the system.
yeah. Thank you, Marty. This has been such a great presentation and very timely for me. I appreciate you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I didn't do 23andMe, but that could be another day for those that want to dive into it. There's just more sensitive information there versus here when it comes to people's personal health. So that's why I chose not to do that. All right. Do we want to close with a prayer?
Yes, Sister Haynes, would you mind giving us a closing prayer?
Sure. Dear Heavenly Father, we are indeed grateful to be alive at this time with technology so prevalent and available to us that we could experience our family lines in such a timely and effective way. We're grateful to come together as a group, and grateful for those who teach and share, that we can grow and learn from one another and enjoy this community of genealogists and researchers. We pray that you'll bless us all to have a good evening and a good rest of the weekend. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Welcome.
Thanks,
Thank
Marty.
you,
Good
Marty.
night.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't bore anyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Stop me.
Thank you for recording, Sister Johnson. We sure appreciate your work in that.
Sure. Do you want me to send it to you?
That would be fabulous.
I
Okay.
love when my verbal stumblings are immortalized in recordings.
Don't worry, we're not picking you apart. We're just grateful for what you share. Actually-
It's fine. I'm not that sensitive.
You're kind of like my mentor in all of this. I'm like, oh, wow, I never knew all of these things. So, if you were messing it up, I'd never know. And it's a good place to start.
So I like when a musician plays and people are like, oh, it's flawless. And the musician's like, oh, I made all these mistakes.
I know, right? Exactly. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Yep.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.